Good morning. How are you guys doing? I hope you're having a good Saturday. I am. I'm pretty excited. I actually got here a little bit early because I was pretty excited to finish this backpack. And then last second yesterday, I decided to sew a shirt version of this dress because I was like, this would be a great shirt for someone who doesn't want to deal with the collar stand and more structured placket. It's a pretty straightforward way to do a collar, and you'd get a cute little shirt. So, all right, I'm going to get right to it because I really want to finish not too late today because I feel like I made you guys hang around for so long yesterday. So let me know if the sound and the brightness and the everything is good. So get right to it. So far, this is the perimeter of the bag, the kind of what she calls the gusset. Goes around, and it's my zip opening into the bag. I fussy cut the top so that the fabric will match. Probably more obvious on a different print, but yeah, I don't want to cut any cat heads off, so I've got the gusset. Here's my inside back with the zippered pocket as well. And then the other side has the straps and the loop handle. And then I did the little optional side pieces so that I could have this extra little detail because not much of my cats are showing on the outside. And then here is the front of the bag, really simple and clean, a little dusty. It's got a pocket here with the curved detail and then the other handle. And when, just so you know, like when you put the front and the back together, even though one handle is sewn here and one's here, they line up at the top so that they're the same length. So you can actually carry it like a duffel bag or something like that, or wear it as a backpack. And then this is the inside of the back here because we didn't attach that yet. And I attached it the other day after I got off stream, and then because I was really worried I'd forget about attaching it. And then I was like, I took it off today. I was like, no, I better do that with them so that they don't forget either. That's more important. So you can see all my stitching, which is kind of fun. All right, so I'm going to do just a quick, I brought some reflective tape out because I have it. I bought it for something else. It's really expensive, so I'm kind of disappointed I never used it, and it's really high quality. So I thought I might add touches to it because a little tiny bit goes a long way and makes something reflective. But I thought I would show how to sew that interior pocket one more time since someone asked about it. They couldn't tell how I was cutting, like what exactly I was doing at the corners to make it not pucker when it turned to the right side. So I thought I'd do it right at the beginning just in case they want to watch that. I made a similar version of what is in the pattern, not the exact same thing. And I'll just do it a little mock-up version. I'm going to brighten this up a little bit. It's so funny how hard it is to get the brightness correct, and it varies differently from fabric to fabric. Okay, so I actually traced the sewing box on here this time. I think I did last time too. I can't really remember. And then I used a contrast so you could see. This is the right side of the fabric. Hard to tell, but that is. And then that's the back side. Made my zipper. So you sew around the box first. I will backstitch when I get to the start again. I'm going to sink my needle right into that corner precisely, turn. Same thing with this one. My stitch length is really not the right length for to hit that corner perfectly. It's the right length for sewing this. You could do it at a little smaller length as well to make it even tidier, and also how do I explain that? It would actually give probably a more subtle but better finish if you have a tighter stitch there. It's also a high stress point, so there's nothing wrong with doing that. That time the needle hit perfectly. I love it when that happens, Now I'll backstitch. Okay, and so this was the part that she really wanted to see. So I'm just gonna cut into here a little bit just to get it going. So you just cut straight down the middle. No one's going to see this edge. It's going to be completely enclosed, so you don't have to worry about it. Good morning, Rebecca. How's it going? Okay, so when I got to here, The important part about getting these corners so that they don't pucker, they pucker really minimally, is you're going to clip into that corner without going through the stitching, as close as you can. Don't be shy about it. If you don't get all the way in there, it won't work. You'll just have to pull it out and like return it right inside out and do it again. So the point of it is to get as close to that corner as possible. And this is true for collars and anything that has a corner that you're turning to the right side. Now it's really great if the tips of your scissors are really sharp. These are actually losing their sharpness at the tip right now. But that would be a really good way to get it, because then you can kind of put the tip right at the corner and cut it. And then you turn it all to the inside of the bag like this. Like this. If it looks fussy, it kind of is. But then you start fiddling with it and pressing it. Roll this edge so that you get it right on the edge there. And then you iron that edge. Iron this whole thing. Just like that. And pull those corners. Let it know who's boss, because you're the boss. So let it know who's boss. You can be kind of tough on it, especially if you use that smaller stitch length. It'll handle a little bit more. So see, that's pretty good. This is the right side. That looks pretty darn good. So when you're sewing two different weight fabrics together, you're gonna have issues sometimes with that, like this side looking more puckery, because this fabric here is weaker than the outer one as far as stiffness goes, so it's not gonna win the battle of looking as smooth as possible. It's going to triumph. So this side's going to be the one that suffers a little bit. It's on the inside of the bag. So then the next step, which I did in that video, was to sew around the opening. You're gonna iron this really precisely so that it looks really good, and then you lay the zipper behind it, lining up the edges of the lining there like that, and stitching around the perimeter. See, just like this. Line up your zipper to those edges there. You can pin it. Nothing wrong with pinning it. I didn't, and it was a little bit of a struggle to watch me do it, especially because my zipper is not the same coil weight zipper that you're going to probably use. You're probably going to use a store-bought one, and it's a finer coil. That's a 2.5. This is a 4.5 usually, and it's a big difference, those 2 points in coil size. So this is what I have here, and something that I can cut whatever length I want. You can tell that I have no stops on this. It's by the yard. They sell by the yard zipper on there, and my slider's obviously a little bigger. So I needed to use my zipper foot in order to do that, and I probably, if I had the lighter weight coil, wouldn't have to because you're so far away from the zipper. So then, yeah, then you would edge stitch all the way around, and then fold your pocket up, sew around the edge, you're done. So this bag has a really easy zipper pocket on the inside. So I just wanted to show that since she didn't see how I got the lesser puckers in the corners there. All right, so I'm gonna change my thread color. Probably should have just changed it before, but I wanted to be able to see that cream thread. And we'll get back. Oh, I did change it. That's so funny, I just didn't pull it through. I did change it. So watch, I'm gonna have 2 knots go through right now. So how are you guys doing? Is anyone sewing? There's 1 knot. There's 2 knots. So that must mean, I don't know, see I have cream thread in there. Are you guys planning sewing or cutting anything out? Remember how we used to lick the thread to like be able to poke it through the eye of the needle? Like over the years I realized, like, doesn't that make the thread like thicker? You know? It's kind of rare that I ever would do that. All right. So we have one main step left on this backpack. I'm gonna tack my stiffener, lining, and canvas to this back piece here. The canvas is what's unraveling so much on my project. It's a little bit more of an open weave, so it tends to unravel more. So, oh, you're reorganizing your studio. Yeah, that's a rabbit hole. I'm constantly reorganizing mine here. And now that I'm kind of fitting two businesses in here, it works, but it's not like visually pleasing. That's how I'll say it. I just have to tell myself, this is what works. And then that calms my brain down a little bit. All right, so the stiffener, okay, so you fuse interfacing to your outer piece. You use another interfacing. It said woven. I didn't realize it was supposed to be fusible. I just saw woven, and I just cut out canvas because that's what I have readily available here. And then I'm using a washable, sewable stiffener, kind of like what you see at the store called Peltex, as my stiffener. She recommends a lightweight foam. So, hi, Melissa. Oh, you're sewing a quilt? Oh my gosh, you're so brave. That is the one thing I'm just like, not very good at sewing quilts. I mean, I don't know if I'm not good at it or I just haven't really done a whole lot of that. I've done like little small ones for my pets, which I'm going to actually sew a few of those coming up because I have a quilt kit in my shop, and I was like, I'm just going to show people how I sew this together. They're so great, and even my family gets excited when I bring a new one home. And then I just lay them on the furniture so they sleep on those because they're all so furry, rather than sleeping directly on the couch, you know? That way if I have guests over, I can just lift those off. Less fur, right? So I'm just tacking my layers all together. I might go all the way around because this canvas is so thready, but I'm going to do it from this side. And then I might I'm just going to like, see how it's so thick it's wanting to ripple it and push it out of the way. That's why I'm like lifting it up and doing it in a few places. It's not going to be so finicky when I have something right sides together with it. Sometimes doing this like stabilizing stitch around something to create it to be easier to sew later on, sometimes it's hard to do. So you just got to release some of that tension of the presser foot pushing on the fabric, creating those ripples. I'm just kind of doing it, kind of hopscotching around. So I'm lifting up my presser foot and kind of continuing on. This is really finicky in this spot here on my bag. I'm going to use my awl. I'm going to pull it over here. I'm going to try and get rid of some of this weirdness now, because that might come back to haunt me later when I go to do the last step. And see, I have one here too, but this is just a stabilizing stitch, so I'm going to get rid of it and release that rather than trying to ease it in like that. So now all my layers are fairly secure. So I'm going to sew this piece to this one first. I'm going to do the stiffener piece first because it's going to be the fussier one to sew. It's going to be the least forgiving, the least moldable one, the least flexible, and then sew my other one on there. I'm going to get rid of a lot of this right now. It's going to come back, but at least I'll get rid of some of it for now. These aren't the most ideal scissors to do this with. Get my strap out of the way. I'm going to look at it from the other side as well. You just won't want to do too much of this because you wouldn't want to accidentally make your backpack perimeter smaller. That would make it harder to sew together. Or not true, like not square anymore, squared. I know it's a rectangle, but do you know what I mean? Like 90-degree angles and a true rectangle. I have a funny story about that because I kind of on a similar vein, like when one of my first projects in high school, wasn't one of my first, it's just first like over my career. Like I had sewn enough to know better, kinda, you know, and I had to, one of my projects I had to sew something where I matched plaids or stripes. So I picked this little crop top and I cut it out of the plaid, and the teacher kept saying, make sure you match the the plaids of the side seam and blah, blah, blah. And when you hem it, you know, pick a line to hem along, because that was the exercise. And I did that. And as I was hemming and chatting with my friends and hemming, I was like, God, the hem on this thing is taking forever. Oh, I was cutting it for the hem. You know, I was like cutting, scissors, you know, just sitting there, blah, 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 blah. And then I realized, wait a minute, I did match my plaids on the side seam, but I matched them like one repeat different, and I was cutting around in like a corkscrew around my top, and it was getting shorter and shorter and shorter. The teacher, I think she either pretended not to notice, or she probably just thought it was so amusing that she let it slide. Or she didn't notice, which I would be surprised. I did not like that person. She was kind of mean, kind of grouchy. Pretty good teacher though. Grouchy. All right, so I'm marking the centers of my gusset here. I keep wanting to call this a baffle. I'm marking the center of my gusset at the top. I'm going to mark it at the bottom here, and the way I'm doing that is just lining up these seams that we've already sewn like this, because you wouldn't want this to get crooked. This is such a good example of like when you're sewing things that are in lots of layers, how the inside layer ends up being a different length than the outside layer, and it's hard to get it to line up. We struggle with that a lot here at Chicken Boots, because when you add stiffener to the inside of something, that thickness changes the length of the outer piece that goes around it. It doesn't change it, it just makes it the inside piece too short or too long. It makes it too long in this case. I'm not describing that very well, but it's a constant problem. It's like you have to accommodate for that thickness, and we do. So you can't use some of our lining pieces as the outer piece, even though they're identical. They are slightly smaller because I have to allow for that thickness of that stiffener. All right, so this is the front of my bag. So I want my cats to go like this. And then I'm going to mark the center. Oh, it's actually marked right there. So I have my anchor points. Where's my pie? Where's my pie? Where's my cherry pie? I'm going to mark my center. And the reason I'm doing the centers on the both sides is because when this is sewn, I'll tell you what, this is the trickiest part of bag making. The last step's always the trickiest. I just bent that pin. If you bend a pin, just throw it away. Don't keep it. And it's because if you have something making the bag three-dimensional, you wouldn't want this center to be to the left and this one to be the right of it, because then your bag does this wonky little torqued thing. And remember, we say no to torquing here, right? So if you try and get your centers lined up from front to back on the bottom and the top, you're going to have a truer bag that's in its, rectangular shape. I'm actually going to fold it this way to get this. I don't have the center marked on the bottom here. So I'm going to do it from the outside, like fold it this way, because if I fold it this way, did you see all those wrinkles happening? I can't find the center accurately of that lining piece by doing that. And we're sewing it from the lining side, so you don't have to mark the outside. We're going to sew it from the lining side first. Oh, you know what? I'm doing this the way I would do it for Chicken Boots. It's actually the other way. That's going to be on the inside. Whew, good thing I noticed that. I'm going to do it this way. Right sides together. I almost sewed that the way I do for Chicken Boots. That's so funny. Such a habit. We do the binding on the exterior for our things, mainly so that the bag will stand up on its own, and because it's easier on our hands to sew it that way so we don't have to turn the bag right side out at all during the process. All right, so then we want to mark the center of the outside, not the lining. Good thing we're doing this together, right? And I find that the piece that has to be to go around, like if this is a long straight piece going to a rectangle or square of any kind, I find working from the straight piece to be better than working from this side, because it's a lot easier to move this around, and also this is the thing I'm trying to bend into the shape that I want. So, and you'll understand that better when I'm going around sewing it, because I have to hit these corners, right? I have to turn the corner with this bag. And because it's so thick, I'm already concerned that it's not going to match for some reason. See all those layers? It's a lot of layers. Like, I'm kind of tempted to take out the stiffener, but I thought I'd pin it and see what I think and just take off the stiffener if I'm not into it. My binding may not be wide enough to go around this edge right now. You know what I mean? In quilting, you use a lot wider of a binding. Okay, so I don't have a mark over here. When you make this pattern, you draft the pieces as you cut them out. So the notches aren't pre-printed on a pattern piece. You don't have pre-printed pattern pieces. So you have to draw out your patterns. All right, so let's see. I'm just going to kind of take a look at it right now. So if that was that corner there. See how well it's matching right now. So it's already very tight. See that? It's already a little bit shy. And so we might look at moving up a little bit more, closer to where that canvas really is. Super thick. I'm going to do this on the other side as well. So you want to look at the pivot point right here. That's the seam allowance right there. In fact, we're going to stitch through these layers right here just to make it a little easier to not lose this layer under this layer. Because the last thing you want is to not catch all your layers. So I'm just going to sew a little bit right here so I can make sure. See how the stitching is right on the edge there, but it's kind of in the interior there. Yeah. And it's partly because I'm losing some of my canvas, and maybe I cut it like a skosh too narrow when I cut it out. Yeah, exactly. The binding never seems wide enough. Quilts are so thick, and that's part of it, because I don't know if this is the term that you would use in sewing, but I learned this term from woodworking, that, like, you know, when the saw blade, like a table saw, like cuts a piece of wood and it leaves the space of the saw blade on there, that's called the kerf. And they account for the kerf in measuring for woodworking. And I feel like it's the exact same thing with when you're dealing with thicknesses, is that there's that kerf that you need to account for. And I just know my binding is all pre-made and pre-cut. I'm cheating and using binding that we have here. It's only 1 3/8 inch wide. I don't even know what the pattern called for, because I was just going to use that. And I know my binding is really narrow for this thickness, even though we sew some really thick stuff here, usually 2 layers of stiffener and 4 layers of fabric, and sometimes a layer or 2 of vinyl in there. So it should be able to accommodate it. It's just trickier. All right, so let's see. So I'm walking this here. I'm looking at the juncture of the seam allowance. I'm not trying to line up the raw edges. I'm trying to line up the seam. So we'll just leave that there. And we'll see how we're doing. Why not, you know? Okay, so there's my center. There's my center. I can probably make that. Let's see how the side is. Because I can't assume that I've sewed this perfectly symmetrical, right? I have probably made some errors in cutting, and probably made some errors in sewing, or just took a little bit bigger seam allowance or a little less seam allowance here and there. And when you're talking about a 1/4 inch seam allowance, if you're a 1/16 of an inch off here and a 1/16 of an inch off there, that's an 1/8 of an inch. It adds up really quick. Yeah, so I'm going to kind of drop this down a tad bit, and that's how I'm going to do it. I'm just gonna try and just pin through the canvas layers instead of the stiffener. I don't usually pin our stuff, so I'm realizing how much thicker it could be. Pushing that so I'm lining up all my edges. There's my center mark. It's so thick. I know it probably looks like I'm not doing anything, but I'm like fighting with it right now. So live all. This one's perfect. I love this all. Don't take away my all. I know. I really, this is a crutch for me. Like, this is all I have here, you guys. This is all I use sitting right here. Sometimes my pins when I'm streaming, but that's it. If my all wasn't here, I would literally get up and look for it before I started. Like, I would leave you guys to find my all. There's no way I would sew without it. Okay, this is another thing I'm going to do. I'm actually going to tack this like that. I'm going to tack this one too. I'm going to get rid of these pins. So I'm thinking about sewing a shirt version of this dress today if there's time. I'm really drawing this out right now. But, so if I don't have much time, I won't do it. It was just a extra thing. Okay, I don't want to sew around the perimeter. I just started to do that. And the reason I don't want to do that is because if I have a stitching line there, and say I put the binding on and I don't hit that spot exactly, the stitching line will show on the inside, or it just isn't as nice of a thing. So I'm going to actually move this down a little bit more into the interior a little bit. I don't want to underestimate the difference or overestimate it. I kind of want to get it right on. Stretching it is easier than easing it in sometimes, and vice versa, right? All right, we're going to go for it. Let's see what we're up against, right? Okay, so when I do binding, and you know what? She does the exact same thing, so I was really excited to see that. I fold under the first edge like this, and maybe quilters do this too. And I lay it on there just like that. And I know that my thread does not match the binding I'm using, and I'll tell you why. Because it matches my bag, and this is the seam of my bag. And so when I flip it to the outside, because of the thickness, it's naturally going to want to pull on that seam, and I'd much rather not have white threads kind of peeking through that seam. So that's why I'm using the purple thread. I'm also going to make sure all my little thready things here kind of push to the outside. Less to trim later on. So your machine is definitely going to probably be a little bit grouchy with you when you do this. So I keep this as straight as possible when I approach the seam. I can see my seam allowance on this piece is right here. So that's what I'm going away from. I'm not looking at the interlining, I'm looking at the shortest piece. Now I'm just going to pivot just like that. So when your machine's a little bit grouchy, you may have to like lift up your presser foot and kind of walk it around without breaking the thread at all. Because like I've been saying lately, your feed dogs are pulling the fabric and that's helping it along. But your presser foot, I don't use a walking foot. If I was using a walking foot, it would kind of be doing this with those feed dogs. And then it would be not pushing the fabric away. So when it's this thick, you know, and this is, it's not pushing the fabric, but because it's going into the presser foot, it's kind of pushing the fabric towards me a little bit. It's resisting a little bit. It's really ever so slight, but it adds up. All right, so I'm getting down to here. I'm just gonna look and see how I'm doing, and it looks really good. So Now, I know you guys will probably want to sew the perimeter of your bag before you do the binding. You can do that. It's fine. I'm just going to pull this up and get this as straight as possible again when I get to the corner. Sink my needle in, pivot, and turn. There we go. No problem. I'm using 1/4 of an inch seam allowance because I know my binding, this cut binding needs to finish about 3/8 of an inch. So it'll be 1/4, 1/4, 3/8, 3/8. So that is about 1.25 inches. That leaves an extra 1/8 of this width, hopefully for the kerf of the thickness. Hopefully that's not too much math for you, but that's how I determine it for us. And in general, it works. The good news is it's on the bias, it's a little stretchy, and when you see me do that last step, you'll see that I'm stretching the bias to make it all work. And I'm going to trim the seam allowance pretty narrow to kind of compensate for the thickness. All right, so we're getting down here again. I'm going to look at my corner and just see. Beautiful. All right, so it was worth kind of fussing around and making sure we were going to make it. And see, this is another good check. Look at my bag is straight across from itself right here. You don't want that to be wonky. Like that would be okay as long as the rest of it didn't get wonky, but it's just a good check. It'd be nice if there were a notch there, but you have your corners. You have your start and stop. Now say I was not going to make it right here. Now, one of the ways you could fudge is just to go in more this way. It's not going to make a huge difference on this kind of project. Maybe your bag is 1/4 inch narrower at the bottom. You're not going to notice that. So don't be too hard on yourself. I'm just straightening it out again. And this is also something I do in chicken boots. I push this fabric down, and if this were stiffer, I would force it to do that, even if it didn't want to. We do that a lot. If you saw me sew our project bag or our pocket bucket, it's like a wrestling match. I should sew one for you guys. All right, and so when I got to the beginning, I just laid my fabric right on top of that. I cut it off. You can cut it to match whatever you want. But see, then when I turn it, it's just clean finish to begin with. Just like that, so it's nice and clean. All right, so here's our first step. Let's look at it in here. Got some threads that snuck through. We can clean up those later. Just making sure there weren't any tucks. Since there's so many thicknesses and this fabric is a little lighter weight, there could be tucks. So I'm just going to look now because it would be a real shame to have that. And you know what? Check it. It's like, I feel like I used to never check my work because I was too scared to see what I would find. And it's almost like, well, if I don't look, it won't be wrong. But let's be honest, you don't want to have to take something apart and fix it later. So just check. It's like a math problem. All right, let me find my scissors. Where are my big scissors? Oh, they're right here. I need my beefy scissors for this. I'm going to trim this way down. I'm going to trim it to, I'm going to kind of angle my scissors and go just under my binding edge there. So I know that's the width I'm going for. I almost cut one of these out like right away after finishing on Thursday sewing with you guys. I was like so into it. It was so fast to do the whole bag basically, and then you just have this one little step. I know it's not a little step, but you know, doing that much and seeing how good it looks, and it's so simple that I think it motivates you to want to be brave and do this next step, which is smart, right? Yeah, I know my scissors need to be sharpened. I was about to say ironed. I forgot to lock my door today, so let's hope no one walks in. I'll shout out my address just in case. Saturdays are a little different in my little office area. Okay. Okay, how are we looking? Is it narrow enough? I'm going to trim the corner. Not too much. So the way I look at binding, I'm not a quilter, right? So I have had to figure out how to do binding in a totally different way, probably. Not a way that's not done, but there wasn't really resources to talk to people about it when I was figuring it out. The internet was not what the internet is now 10 years ago. So the way I look at binding is that I want to sew it at the seam allowance that I kind of want it to finish. And this seam allowance fills up the binding, right? Like it fills up that whole width. So now I'm going to flip it to this side. I'm just going to check to see, am I going to struggle anywhere? Like this looks pretty thick right here to me. So I'm going to trim it a little bit more. Thick by thick I mean wide. It looks a little wide for my binding. You can use a wider seam allowance and a wider binding if you want. All right, let's do it. Oh, actually, I'm going to do my other side of my bag. And then I'll do the last step so I don't have to change the thread color. Okay. So, this one will be even easier. It's not as thick. You don't use the stiffener on the back part. Kind of funny. Now that I'm thinking about that, like if I put the stiffener on the back, it would offer some padding. I'm wondering if either I put it on the wrong one. I'm pretty sure I didn't, though. I'm pretty sure it went on that one. Or if you do that just for an aesthetic type of thing. So I've never seen or sewn with the foam that they talked about. And I know like Friends use, there's my center mark, like a softer stiffener than we do. Like, I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what it's called. Just trying to think, like you could probably use that maybe. Just depends, I guess, on the look you have. All right, so I already have a center notch. Yeah, it's still in the center. All right. Okay, so we're going to go by our original center markings. Right sides together. Oh, so that's right. I did need my lining ones. That's funny. Confused myself. I'm going to trim this lining down. I can already see that it's just too long. Make sure it's all nice and flat. But you see that like this, I can get rid of some of this right now. It's just going to cause me trouble later. So let's just trim it down. My scissors caught on an edge there and just wanted to keep cutting right there. I'm like, no, stop going into the fabric. This is just my little like triangle strap holder, so I can trim that down. And then the side looks pretty good. You don't want to trim too much. You need everything we trim off this way changes this length here. Anything I trim off these short ends changes my length here. I need those measurements in order to sew this next step. We don't want it to be different from the front. Okay. Right sides together. Actually, I'll just tack it. Okay, so I'm going to fold the bag like this. So that's a little easier and it's not pulling on what I'm trying to sew right now. I find that over the years I've gotten like, yeah, Rebecca, it does, doesn't it? I'm excited. Over the years I've learned that I can really be hard on the bag while it's in process. And I think I used to be shyer, like, oh, I don't want to hurt the bag. But you know, honestly, if I can't do what I'm doing to it in process, then it's just not going to stand up anyway. So you see all that extra there? That's going to be trimmed off. I have to consider this the edge of my seam allowance and measure my seam line from there, not here. You have to go with the shortest one. So all these different thicknesses have added up into a little bit of inaccuracy. And, you know, you can draw a picture of sewing something like this and make it look perfect. But when you're doing these kinds of thicknesses, all these different fabric types, you're going to get this. So just make sure that you're not trimming way too much to change your measurements for your seam lines. And just keep it in the back of your head so that when you're trying to match it, you're not going crazy pulling your hair out. Make adjustments somewhere else. All right, so I am doing this right? Yeah. Gonna go by smaller thing too. Where's the having trouble? Where's the center line? Oh, there it is. It's right there. I'm in the completely wrong spot. I was looking for a slit. So I'm folding this up so that the bag isn't pulling away from that edge like this. I'm just reducing this. I'm just giving it slack. That's all. That's why I'm folding it up. There's my center. There's my center. Just gonna sew it rather than pin it. And we're gonna kind of give it a look. See how it's doing. So we know that, so another thing you can do is you can lay this one on top of this one. Line up those edges best you can and kind of give yourself a guide like, oh, that line needs to line up with that right here, right? So I could just like maybe mark it with a little chalk. It may not land perfectly there, but hey, that's another like anchor point we can kind of aim for. And we like those. We like anything that's like a stepping stone on our way to the perimeter. I really need to get better about explaining things. I had to watch a little bit of my video the other day because I was looking for something, and listening to me say thing and that and there rather than being more specific was a little painful for me. I'm trying to get better about explaining things, you guys. So just say, that didn't make sense, lady. All right. Just looking at it. Feeling it. After sewing bags for so long, you can kind of tell when it's not going to sew together. I kind of know by the time I get to that point that I may be having an issue with a bag anyway because of maybe something else, some other shenanigans that happened while I was sewing. Okay, let's give it a whirl. So I'll fold over my end of my binding, and I'm trying to decide how I want to finish this. So I want to go, I'm going from this side to that side. So let's do the same thing on this one. Okay, I get it in there, I get it started. tell the bag what I want it to do. Peel it back a little bit. Look for my shortest seam allowances and line those up with each other. Straighten it out when I get to the corner there like that. And like right now my hand is holding this bag and kind of pulling it to reduce the tightness right there. I don't want it to pull on what I'm sewing, so I'm trying to remove that. So this hand is holding the corner of this bag right now and kind of pulling it like this to reduce the amount that it wants to pull on the seam. So it won't fight me when I want to line it up. So I'm looking for the edge right there, and I'm going to try and stop with my needle down 1/4 of an inch away from the edge or whatever the seam allowance that I would be using. Then I pivot, rearrange my bag just like this, and you got to pull the under bag straight towards you. Pull it like this. Straighten it out. Line up the top on there. Make sure all your layers are going to get caught. It's go time, man. We got this is our last step, so we got to really make sure that we're doing it all. We do not want to have to take any of this out later because this is a pain. So that's why we're trying to give ourselves all the options, because the next step is the easy step. I know you don't think that because it's binding, but it doesn't matter. It's the inside of our bag. No one's going to see this. We're not turning it in at the fair. No one's going to judge it. So, and look at that. My little line is matching up with the chalk. Yay! Okay, so I'm getting all my threads out of the way so I have fewer to trim later. So this is kind of, you know, setting ourselves up for the next stage, and that's why I'm trying to be diligent and getting it all to line up really nicely. And if you didn't have a live camera on you, you could probably go a little faster than this and wing it, because there's a lot of little things you can do to kind of help yourself fix it if it does get into a spot of bother. But I'm going to try and make this so I'm not taking anything out later. And just so you know, like when I'm sewing on my binding, I am pulling it a little bit. Okay, so this worries me a little bit. There's my lining. There's this piece. I'm just going to kind of look inside there. Make sure. I have to go with the lining piece there. I can't go to here. I have to go to that spot. So hopefully that doesn't make my bag wonky. So I'm pulling the binding a little bit when I apply it. I kind of pull it taut. And the reason I do that is in the final step, when I go to edge stitch it down and finish it, it'll want to do it. It'll just want to curve to the other side and naturally turn under. If you've ever seen me sew binding, it's kind of this step that sets me up to make it look so easy in the end. It's just like any job. All of the prep is, you know, what makes the last little steps work out so well. All right, so we're matching to our starting point, or our other matching point, not our starting point, but our little sewn tack center spot, you know. The spot where I centered the top of the bag is matching. All right. Like that. This is so exciting. The next step will be much faster. The last one. Straightening it, making sure. Looked like the lining was a little shy there as well. Straightening it all out, getting my threads out of the way. Ooh, see that got a little, I'm actually going to I'm going to like take that out right there. It got a little, see how this is narrower here than here? I don't like that. I need all of my binding. I can't lose any. I'm going to use my all because I'm afraid, because it's so tight, like there's so much thickness. I don't want to accidentally cut my binding. with my seam ripper. The awl is gentler because I use the tapered tailor's awl. It's really not gonna like hurt anything. There's no blade on it. Just like that. I really can't lose any of the width of my binding. So you can imagine like what it's like for sewers in a factory to make really big bags. Or out of those really heavy denier corduroys. They're just murder on your hands. They really are. I've sewn with some of that when I used to do patterns for a motocross company. I couldn't even sew some of the ballistics cloth that they would send me. I could, but it would make me wince the entire time. I was so nervous I was going to break my needle. And I had this time where, this is not this machine, but another machine. It was a good machine, but I was sewing robes for just like a little like side project when I was young, and I was like just trying to earn some money, and the spa I was working for would say, hey, will you make some robes? I did. And every time I got to like this shoulder seam juncture, my needle would break and hit me right here on my cheekbone. And that was before I wore glasses. And so and it would happen almost every time, and it always would hit me right there. It was so freaky. And when I later on was sewing the motocross gear, whew, I was so nervous. That was a beefier needle, beefier machine even. Okay, so I'm getting down to my very last one, so it always gets a little tight. And I keep checking it to make sure it's going to work before I commit. Oh, darn, I have a seam in my binding right there. Oh, I should show you guys how to seam binding together. Because I have the benefit of using this stuff on a roll that we had made. Ooh, it just matches perfectly. Yay! I love that. All right, I know I didn't backtalk, I don't need to. Okay, I can't wait to turn this to the other side, you guys. But I have to do my next step before we see the big reveal. The last thing I want to do right now is cut my bag, like by accident. So we're going to trim our seam allowances. I'm angling my blades, if you can see. Like I'm angling it like this so that it's trimming those under layers a little bit more. It's kind of how you cut patterns out when you have to cut two layers. Like say you're cutting a front that's on the fold, like as a pattern drafter, you angle your scissors because the bottom layer will end up being a little bit bigger than the top layer if you don't. And then you triple check it to make sure it didn't do that. You never give a pattern to a factory and say cut one on the fold. You have to open it up. Oh yeah, well, yeah, I mean it's heavy duty sewing, Melissa, and so it's not common, like really. When I was doing the robes, you know, that I probably could have been using a better needle size. I don't really remember the parameters of that. It just imprinted on me having those needles fly up and hit me on my cheekbone. I had a little red mark by the time my boyfriend got home from work. He was like, what's wrong with your cheek? And I said, oh, my needle kept breaking and hitting me there. And it was just like a little red mark, kind of like the red mark I have now, but that's from allergies. I sometimes think, when I see that, I always think about that time, like, oh, it looks like the needle's been hitting me again. You just never forget that, you know? I sewed my finger on the binding machine last year, and that's another one I'll never forget. That was my worst one ever. It was the weirdest way it all happened, too. So, I was not doing anything wrong, either. And the machine didn't do anything wrong. It was just one of those really unlucky things, because the binding I was using was not ideal binding. It's the right weight fabric, but the fabric has this printing coating on it that makes it not pull through the machine. So I was pulling through the machine, like easing it through and helping it, kind of. so that it wouldn't get hung up. That's all I'll explain. But now I do not sew that binding on the binding machine. I do it all by hand. We don't really need it very often. All right, so all my edges are trimmed. And we can do more trimming when we're doing the binding step. I'm going to take a peek. So one of the notes she says is to, before you do this step, the second one that I just sewed, open your zipper a little bit. I should have told you that before I started. So open your zipper a little bit. Otherwise, because some of the zippers like that you get at the fabric store have a locking slider. Mine don't. And if they do, it'll be really hard to open up your backpack. I'm just going to take a peek in there. Make sure I don't have any like tucks or anything. Ooh, it's going to be so cute. I just see a thread there. You can see the wrestling match. I'm also like looking under here, making sure I caught all the layers. Be a shame if that was a thing. Oh, look at all that thread there. From my, I can tell that was where I changed my bobbin. Okay. So now we're going to do our binding. I'm going to change my thread color to cream. This stitch won't show on the outside, and it's not a functional seam for the bag to hold together. And I'm going to start with a full bobbin rather than a partial one. I don't want to run out of bobbin now. So. The other time I had broken needles was when I sewed kimonos for a friend, and they were silk. And silk is a really strong fiber. So strong that, strangely, you have to use a really fine needle, like a 6. And then when you use a size 6 needle, you have to get a lighter weight thread to fit through the eye of the needle. And the finer, sharp needle will pierce the silk better. But when you're going through a lot of layers, it doesn't really like that as much as it could. And those were just like, it was just like an art exhibit for a friend who had hand painted them. They turned out amazing. I mean, she's an incredible artist. I'll bet you've heard of her. She's a pretty cool fabric designer. Okay, so let's see. Let's flip our binding. I always flip my corners like this, and I kind of like tuck it in there like that. Let's do our thicker one first. In this corner. So this will be the harder one. Actually, let's do the easier one first so we can do our little binding primer on an easier surface. All right, so I'm going to pull the bag out of the way like this. And I just fold this under like that. This was my start stop. And I find it easier if I start it just before these folds right here, so I get going, and then I can kind of tuck in all those little folds. So I'm going to want my awl. Now nobody's going to see this, so it's not as critical what it looks like on the other side, but it's great practice, so why not try? And the way I look at binding is, I explain this to you guys all the time, so I'm sorry if it's repetitive, but just in case you're new or you just came for just this backpack, the thing that I look at is where my first seam is, where I attached the binding. Here's my first pass. So if my needle's to the left of it, it's going to show on the fabric. If it's to the right of it, it'll be on the binding, depending on how far over the binding is this way, right? So if I fold the binding just past that little first stitch edge and then stitch to the right of the fold, it'll land on the binding. No problem. Okay, now when I get to the corner, I'm tucking it in there. I'm going to put my awl in that corner like this. And then I'm going to pivot there. And I'm making sure that the bag underneath isn't getting caught. And I can pick up that folded edge with my awl, which is really nice. I've done a lot of binding. So I have had a lot of practice, but I did struggle with it a lot. And that's what I found, like I had to make it logical, and I had to think about like, when I do this, what is happening? And when my needle is here, where is it on the other side? And that really helped me figure out how to be more successful with it. Just getting rid of all these threads as I go. Okay, so I want my corner to be nice and tight. And in your corner, you really want to make sure that you're stitching on the seam allowance of your binding, not into the bag, because you don't want a weird corner pucker. You don't want to sew to the left of your stitching also, because we've already established what our bag dimensions are with that first seam, and you don't want to change any of that because you may end up creating a tuck. My white thread might show if the bag seam was pulled right there. So let's just leave that first stitch as the only stitch determining what the outside of the bag looks like. Now we're just doing the decorative interior seam finishing. So let's keep it to the seam. Hello, little kitty. So I get to the corner, I pull all this away from the corner like that. This is the easier one. Get to that corner. I push that away, that thing I just pulled out of the way, I push it that way now. And now I correct my binding. So if this were like a exterior seam, I probably would have rounded this. Like this looks pretty good, you know, and that's what it's looking like on the other side. This looks pretty good as a corner, but it's a sloppy way to do it. And as a quilter, that would really bug them that wasn't like mitered or like cleanly folded at that edge. That's why if it were something that was showing, I would do a rounded corner rather than a sharp one, because we don't miter corners with our binding. It would be too much work to do that. There are easy ways to do it, but it also creates a little pocket that customers who don't understand sewing will sometimes question, like when the zipper is still in the middle of the teeth and hasn't been opened or closed, they're like, oh, this one's broken, you know. And so I just try and remove any possibility of doubt to our customers. And when they see things like let's see if I can find any stitching on. So I actually did pretty good. Like say my stitching here was not showing, like it was right in the ditch. The customer might think I missed the binding and it was going to come apart, because visually to them, they think that that is the only seam. And so I would make sure that they can see both sides, because I have actually had that question a couple times, and I'm like, nope, that's the second stitch. We just weren't really precise when we sewed it, so you can't see where it was. You got to remember, my audience is primarily non-sewers, so I have to make sure that what they see looks totally sound, you know? It's like indie sewn things are probably better sewn than other things in most cases. I know there's a lot out there that's not. And but for some reason there's a perceived feeling of doubting it more than you would if it were just like bought at Target and sewn somewhere in another country. It's just this weird misconception that we have probably. All right, so there's my seam. I forgot to sew a little when I changed my bobbin, so now I have this yucky thread tail that I'm always don't want. I know no one's gonna see it. But I'm gonna clean it up anyway because it's a pet peeve. And part of it took my seam out when I did that. There we go. I don't use the automatic back tack on my machine, and I think if I did, it wouldn't leave that weird thing. But the automatic back tack is a little, I don't know, I just don't really like it. It's a little abrupt sounding. It kind of startles me sometimes. Okay, so that's one. And here's our last one. So this is going to be the harder one because remember, this thickness, look how thick that is. This has to wrap around that thickness and still have enough room to fold under. And in certain areas, like right there, it's probably not going to do it. So we're going to trim that down a little bit more before we get there. Doing it while you're already, like when you get close and you're already sewing the binding can be a little bit tricky. I'm actually going to trim this area down a little, just a scotch, because adding the thickness of the fold where I start and stopped, it's going to make it a little more difficult. So I'm just kind of looking around for any other areas I can trim. Make sure that seam allowance is going to fit in there really nicely and not give me too many problems. I'm always trimming from the binding side because it would be really easy to accidentally cut my binding if I were cutting from this side. Sometimes I cut from that side because I can't see it from the other side. So, all right, let's do it. It's our last step. Okay, I'm going to pull that bag out of the way down there. I'm going to start just above where I start and stopped. Okay, I've got it going. Now I'm going to arrange everything. This is how I get away without pinning things. I personally wouldn't pin this binding. I think you'll find it really frustrating if you do. The pins will probably poke you, and that just, I don't know about you, but that makes me really grouchy when my pins start poking me when I'm like already fussing with something. And turning corners and all that with your pins might be a little tricky. I know you can do it, and it's really good practice to try this without using some pins. Use a few if you need. But remember, when I attached the binding, I slightly pulled as I attached it. And so that's why it naturally, look, it's curving towards the side. Once I pulled it to the side, it wants to stay like that. If it were too big, I'd have to ease it in there, which isn't the point of binding. Which isn't the point of bias cut binding. This is bias cut, so it's 45-degree angle to the length grain, and that is why it's stretchy. If you bought a bag from a company, like off Amazon or something like that, they're not an indie company that's doing nice cotton binding on the inside, there's a chance that they would probably use something like this grosgrain ribbon as the binding. They have a machine that puts that on, and it may be nice and tidy. They don't have to fold over each edge and everything, but there's no give in this going either way because it's woven and it doesn't have a bias. Our factory used to use a lot of that. And I understood why they liked it, but it didn't look that great, to be honest. It looked very industrial, I'm not going for that look. We use a lot of industrial like notions and things because that's my background, and because I can stand behind those notions because I know where they're made and how they're made, how strong they are. I'm not a big fan of brass zippers because they're scratchy and they catch on yarn. But I love the way they look. You also have to buy them in fixed lengths. I can't do them by the yard like I do what we do here. So it gives me a lot of flexibility. Okay. I'm pulling this right here out of the way, the gusset, because I'm in the corner, making sure I'm not going to catch it. Keeping my binding out of the way. Try and keep the weight of my bag over there. It wants to, when I'm close to the edge here, it's not very big, so it kind of makes it awkward. Like on one hand, I hope my daughter's like, ooh, that's so cute, I want it. But on the other hand, I'm like, no, I want it. I just want her to think it's cute. But you can't have it. She got my kimono last week, remember? And it looks really good on her. Did you guys see that? It looks really good on her. Let's hope she wears it. Did you guys see my little button, like the way I sew my buttons on, like with my machine? And did you see that gal's comment where she takes the presser foot off of her machine to do it? I thought that was genius. You'd have to be really careful, like holding the button near the needle. But as long as you remove the presser foot, but still put the presser foot down as if it's there, you won't have any tension issues. Because that's what engages the tension discs, is the putting the presser foot down. And then just watch your fingers. I'm going to try it. I thought that was so smart. I'm so out of the loop on garment making and home sewing. It's been a while. All right, you guys, there's the inside of my bag. Let's turn it right side out. So if you're doing this in waxed canvas, it's gonna be a lot harder. I'm just gonna tell you that, sewing that and turning it. But wax canvas is gorgeous. Okay. Poke out all my corners. At least I don't have to try this one on to photograph it. Yeah, that's right. You're the hand sewer, Rebecca. I know. You know what? I bet my machine has that too, to be honest. It's a really good machine. It's a Bernina too. Bernina tends to think about things like that as a default and not make it an extra thing that you have to buy. But, I know. I have a whole lot of feet that came with it. But, you know, like, in all honesty, I'm just not a gadget person besides the awl. What's that dust? Get off my new backpack. But I should look for it. I should just put it on my machine since that's the only thing I sew on that machine is my buttons and buttonholes. I actually do use a buttonhole foot. And that's so that the grooves of the buttonhole stitch are inside, like the grooves, the buttonhole stitch follows the grooves of the buttonhole foot, and that way it doesn't push against what I'm trying to sew. Okay, I see this long thread here, and I don't want to accidentally take out my stitch, but I want to get rid of it. So I'm just kind of looking for the path of least resistance here. Oh, there we go. Let's see. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. It's not the stitch. Okay. As long as I know what to cut. Because getting back in there and stitching that right now would be pretty hard. Okay. All right. Where's all this dust coming from? Let's see how it looks. Pretty cute. Here we go. Not bad, huh? Here's my bag. Straps. And see how the handle lines up even though one is in the seam and one is not. And you know, honestly, I feel like this handle, from experience, especially if you use actual webbing, not homemade straps like I did, make sure you burn the ends of the webbing if it's a synthetic. But if it's cotton or something like that, I will tell you, it won't last in this seam. It just won't. I mean, I know that it's secured and we've sewn it a few times, but I worked with webbing for a really, really long time, and it is the most weak and strong thing. It's the biggest oxymoron out there. So if you end up using a webbing handle, I would recommend making it a little bit longer and stitching it down here and then going up. I didn't even think of that when I sewed this one on, so I'm really sorry I didn't mention that. But webbing is, if you especially can't finish the edge, like melting it if it's synthetic, and even that is not guaranteed because that whole melted thing can just come off. Make sure that you stitch it, or don't put it in the seam. Stitch it like you do this. This is the best way to handle webbing, is to stitch it flat with a box stitch right here. Just do it. Like, trust me, because I guarantee you'll use this handle more than you'll use the backpack strap on this bag. And in fact, I would have modded this if I wasn't trying to make it the way someone else might make it, like you guys. I would have modded this to be a shoulder strap coming out of this seam right here. So because that's how I would use this, like more like a messenger bag, because that's all you have to do is put a strap right here, and then you could kind of use it like a messenger bag. So yeah, it turned out really cute. I'm gonna put a zipper pull on there so I can always find it. There's my pocket. Very cool. You don't even need it to be zippered pocket, but that is really nice. I think the binding doesn't bug me at all. I almost did the brighter stuff, but I'm pretty into it. And then here's, you know, this is how the zip tabs work. Just like that. Very cute. I love it. So I can wear it like this. Do I look like I'm going to school? Oh, I'm sorry. That hurt your ears. I just whacked the microphone. I have the like strap like all the way cinched right now. And I put my put my arm through the cinched part. Let's see. I want to try it on, but it's really, I've got it all the way cinched up. Hey. Let's see. How's it look? Not bad, huh? Okay. Very cute. What time is it? Oh, it's already 12:20. Wow. All right. Well, I'm going to try and do this Reeta shirt because I want it. Just really quick. I already serged it all. Told you guys my serger the other day. Just like, it just stopped stitching properly. It was the weirdest thing. Never had a problem with my serger. I could not fix it, which was really surprising. Because I just thought like, oh, it's just an adjustment. So I'm just going to make a shirt version of this dress. And the reason I'm going to do that is that I feel like there's a lot of people that want a blouse or a shirt. Oh no, Janice, what's happening? I struggle to sew straight seams often. Trust me. You guys have seen me struggle here. Okay. Yeah, so I feel like this would be a really great way to get a shirt without having to do like all the collar and collar stand, like say of an archer. What are you making, Janice? Okay. Do my darts. I'm gonna hand tie my tails. See, sometimes I adult, see Rebecca? Sometimes I adult and, you know, hand do something. The only reason I hand tie those buttons on is because if you just like cut the thread on the outside, it would show like a little like a little cut thread piece there. where's my dart? There we go. So there's darts. I already pre-serged this. You don't have to wait for me to do French seams. What I did is I measured to come up with the length. I measured the length of a shirt I was wearing from the high point of the shoulder, which is right here at your shoulder neck juncture here, to the hem. And then I did the same on this pattern. And then I added seam allowance or hem allowance. I didn't spend a lot of time fussing with it. I just did it. I didn't increase the girth or anything. The dress is plenty wide when it's not cinched. So, oh, cool, Janice. So is the bag the gift, or do you put the gift inside the bag? I'm curious. All right, let me just serge these two seams. Are the only two I have left to serge really quick. Almost pre-serged that side seam, but I just couldn't bring myself to sew the dart after the seam was serged. I wanted to serge the seam after the dart was sewn instead. I didn't want like all that bulk there, you know what I mean? So certain things I won't compromise on. Serging this as a blouse is already a little like, you know, cutting some corners, I would say. So I'm trying to decide if I want to put a pocket on it, and I kind of am thinking I'm only going to do one pocket and instead of doing two like it calls for. So this has the pleat, if you remember. I'm wearing it. So if you can't remember, then you can see what it looks like. But it's super comfortable, and that's kind of why I was like, I'm just going to do this. Okay. Sometimes I use my ruler like this to flatten the seam, like that. The center notch over the pleat. I'm gonna sew this quickly, you guys. I'm just warning you. I just thought I would add it on for fun. See how it goes, kind of like a muslin, to see how it would work. I'm going to check my width of my hem there. And then I'm going to sew it on my left side, I think. Go up to the pins. Center it. Like that. I'm going to finger press my dart. There's my last marking down there. There are 4 on the pattern. Awesome, Janice. I'm so glad. That's great. I hope it works for you. I kind of discovered mine late. Like I used it for pattern drafting for forever, and then kind of started using it for, I think, binding. I really think that's where I just wanted to point a finger without hurting myself. Okay. So the only thing I'll say about this pattern, because I know you guys know I had some reservations about it because I saw some kind of things up when I was cutting it out that made me a little concerned about it. Because the sleeve, the grading on it, the size differences is actually flipped incorrectly. So the small is longest, the longest size, and the largest size is the smallest size. And so I got a little worried about the pattern just in general, because if you find something like that there could be other things. There really could be errata on the website, and I may have an old printed copy. You never know. So I cut out kind of the middle of the road size of the sleeve, and it turned out great. I really like it. And then the collar, the other funny grading thing was with the collar. The collar was graded properly, but the way it was printed on the pattern paper wasn't stacked. So it was really confusing. Like, it looked graded on the height of it, and it's not. And it's just a common thing that happens sometimes in grading. It's just totally forgivable. It just made me doubt the pattern then, but obviously it fits really great. And it's went together really nicely. Something like sleeve length and collar height aren't things that are going to affect the sewing of it together, but that style of collar can. So you just have to be careful. All right, so I'm going to put my yoke on. I'll do it in my sandwich sort of way. There's no pleat at the center back, even though there's a yoke. Kind of interesting. It's just a design detail, so you could have a lot of fun with fabrics for this. So you just do the yoke seam like a sandwich with your back in between each yoke. And then 1/2 inch seam. And then we'll do the shoulders the same way with the front, and then that way we don't have to do any tricky sewing. Oh, but we actually won't do the, we're not going to do it the same way because we need to put the collar in the, because this style collar is built with the facing. So you need to do them separately. So I'm going to top stitch this yoke seam here. So if you're making the Reeta Shirt Dress, this is kind of a nice reiteration of part of the pattern. It doesn't include the waist tunnel, which was on the part 2 video, and totally a blast to sew. I really enjoy sewing that. And I'm not a big fan of drawstring waists in general. I like them. They don't look good on me. So I'm really liking how this dress looks. It's actually, it's really comfortable. I don't think it's actually the most like figure flattering on me, but when it's really comfortable, I really don't care. And I don't think it looks bad on me. Don't get me wrong. I actually really like the way it looks. All right, so I'm going to sew the front only to the outside yoke. So just drop that inside yoke away. I'm trying to remember how to sew this collar, but I kind of remember this part. Still 1/2 inch seams. Get rid of these threads here. Just keep it looking tidy. And then this other 1/2 inch seam. I'm going really fast, not being as accurate. Okay. And now we're going to assemble our collar. This collar is the funniest looking collar, isn't it? It works. Okay, so is this my neck seam? And this? Yeah. Okay, so I remember I had to look that up last time too. So let's see. This is, oh, this garment's 3/8 of an inch seam. So sorry about that. I forgot. That's really rare that someone makes their pattern with 3/8 of an inch seams for a woven, and that totally threw me. It's totally fine. It's just more common that they use 1/2 inch or 5/8. I don't like 5/8 inch seams because it's so much fabric and it's so much bulk in your garment. But if you have trouble fitting things, it's really nice to have all of that extra seam allowance to let something out in certain areas, because that's 1 1/4 inches right there almost to play with. Well, you still need seam allowance, but you know what I mean. 2 5/8 inch seams is 1 1/4 inches. All right, I'm going to, let's see, did I understitch this one? I don't think so. The reason you don't really understitch this is because both sides of the collar and the facing show at the same time, at least on the facing. Warm up the iron, finger press this edge, kind of roll it between my fingers. Most fabrics work to do that, but some not so much. I use my awl for the corners, not my seam ripper. Pins are okay, but they tend to bend, so you can use them though. A chopstick works really well too to poke from the inside if you have the right kind of tip on the chopstick. I like using chopsticks for lots of things like that. All right, and then let's see. Let me remember how to do this. How did I say this again? Let's see. This is how do I sew this again? Let's see. I sew this to the collar, right? Is that what I do? Yeah. Why can't I remember? Help me out here. Maybe I need the instructions. Oh no. Kind of tempted. I'm gonna see here. I sew it like this. Yeah. Okay. Oh, you know what I don't have is my notch. Dang it. Okay, I'll just match it from the center and go out. Oh, I don't remember that. That's awesome. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've made a few floral blouses lately. I just really want them in my wardrobe. That's like the best way I can explain it, is that I really just want them like Liberty of London. So I bought these as kind of like mock Liberty of London prints. All right, I can't remember how to sew this, you guys. Let's see. I do this. If I sew it like that, and then I put over my facing like this, like that, and then I put my yoke up there, and then I finish that over the edge, right? That's how I do it, right? The directions are in the other room, so I don't want to go get them. So I'm just going to pretend to sew it. Let's see. Do this, like that. And then if I leave this piece out and sew that to the neck, then I can flip that, put the yoke back up there, and then finish the edge, right? That's how I do it. Ay caramba. Sorry, I don't remember. Let me iron this really quick and we'll try it. I feel like I'm applying the logic of a different collar to this one. And then I told you it was going to be like all easy. Oh, the white with the red and yellow flowers. I think I have that one. I bought it. I made a dress out of it, I'm pretty sure. I love the Liberty fabrics. They're just such a nice feel, you know. Okay. Let me see here. I sew it like this, right? I don't need to do the neck seam though, right? Yeah. I do. But I don't have the, yeah, okay, this is how I do it. I'm pretty sure this is how I do it. You believe in me, right? Okay, I'm just gonna go from the shoulder seam to shoulder seam first and see what happens. I know the neck needs to be finished. I know all layers need to be sewn. And, oh yeah, that is not the center. And with knowing that, that's how I'm gonna start. It's a way to puzzle something out without the instructions. And I don't think I sewed it the way they sewed it anyway last time. There's the center. So I'll just go from the center out. That way I don't have to worry about matching on the other side. I know, I can go get the directions. Is it painful to watch me? I'm not worried right now. Like there's more than one way to get there. Now I'm kind of feeling like it's a personal quest. You know what I mean? I just remember this being really tricky to get all this in here, this neckline. That's all I remembered. You know? I'm winging it. And the way to sew this collar, I have confused in my head with the way I used to always sew this other one. It's the same kind of concept, and you can sew them both the same way. And it's all gonna work out. All right, let's see here. This is almost easier from this side. Famous last words until I get to the tricky bit. I'm gonna turn the collar inside out again. I'm gonna push my shoulder seam to the back. Like that. I don't like the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance right now. Watch it be a quarter, and I should have gotten the directions. I forgot to back tack. Quests are great, right? Okay, let's see. Yeah, like that. See, and I think this one goes like this, and then, yeah, I feel like I'm sewing this the way I used to always sew this other one. That's why I'm getting confused. I'm gonna clip it at the shoulder seam like that. And sew all 3 layers now with the collar and the facing. Maybe I don't end up finishing this today here with you, but you didn't come here for this, right? All right. Let's put the facing on. See, didn't I feel like I attached the facing to the collar first last time. Because wasn't it all like weird and wingy and like in my way? I feel like that's what I remember about it. Was that it was kind of fussy. Oh, I should have checked to make sure my facing was the right length because I modified this pattern. Oh, it is. Okay. go. Now I'm going to do both layers of the collar. So I gave myself that little crutch, which is probably going to bite me in the butt in the end. Let's see. Because I don't want to clip the neckline quite yet. I want to do all layers together. So I'm just sandwiching it all now. And make sure my collar edge is right on the edge, just like that. Smooth out the bottom. Like that. Can you even see? I hope you guys can see. I can't remember. I think I'm going to fold this edge under of the facing. So I feel like that helps me later on. Yeah, if you're just joining, I'm trying to sew this without the instructions. And I just made it the other day, so it's kind of crazy that I've already forgotten. Okay, I'm going to trim that, or clip that neckline. I'm not going to clip that one yet. It'll be harder to deal with if I clip it now. So I'm just clipping part of it, and then I'll do the other facing. This is kind of like how I started the stream sewing that little pocket, zippered pocket demo from the backpack. You want to clip all the way up to that. It doesn't have to be right up to the stitching like it does on that pocket opening. It can be, but you don't really need to. It's as badly on the collar. Okay. So this one now. I accidentally serged this edge yesterday, and I was going to take it out, but this is the quick and dirty blouse. I want more like woven blouses. Woven blouses that I made, I should say. I have a bunch, but I want short sleeve ones that still look nice. Don't want my garment pulling on my machine. Hopefully my serging's not going to show in my seam because it's pretty wide. Okay, I got my collar in there. Making sure it's folded right on that edge, like that. And then I'm going to adjust a little bit better. This is the hardest part of this shirt, of this pattern, probably. I mean, if you just do the shirt version, you don't have to do the waist tunnel, which might be a little intimidating, but it's not hard at all. Just making sure that my seam is not anywhere on that serging, since it'll show them. And I knew I had gotten a little crooked right here, and there it is. I can see it. You probably can't see it because it's white on white. But I just don't want that serging to show on this side here because it shouldn't be there in the beginning, to begin with. I'm going to get rid of these pins because I'm only doing the one pocket. I decided against the other one. So I'm going to clip this neckline right here. See how my tips aren't that sharp anymore? That's why I'm using the depth of my scissors. This looks a little more than 3/8 of an inch. And I think it's because I pre-sewed that section right there. So then when I went back and did it, I made it a little too wide. So, okay, there we go. So now we have the whole shebang. like that. And let's see if I can still get my collar or my yoke in there, because I'm doing this totally out of order. I should have gone and gotten the directions. I was just being lazy. So here's our yoke on the inside like this. Oh yeah. Yeah, so, and then that way we'll clean finish it with this collar edge, right? So I'm going to do this. And I'm going to go as close to the neck as possible. And then the facing's going to cover up that little edge that I can't manage to get in there. Because remember, I don't like hand sewing. Where there's a will, there's a way. And I can get pretty close. You don't want to clip that seam allowance just to be able to get closer. It's not worth it. That can create like a weak point. It might flop. So that looks like that. And see, I did this wrong, you guys. I did this wrong. Can I salvage it? I'm doing this all out of order. Let's see. Like this, like this, like that. There's my collar. See, it's right there. That's what I need to do. I'm gonna sew my neckline right now. Oh, this is bad. I'm sorry I'm laughing. This is so typical me, you guys. I'm like, I'm just gonna whip this out, and then I like get to the machine and I'm like, yeah, you didn't really prepare for that. But I know how to get myself out of a pickle most of the time, so let's see if I can do it. Okay, I've got my shoulder there. And then it'll just be between us. How's that? I'm gonna sew my collar to this neckline with the yoke. But not the top collar. I'm gonna leave that out because I want to use that to finish the edge. I kind of wish I was doing this the right way that I used to do that, because it's a good trick and I would love to show it to you. But I didn't remember the proper order. So sometimes when I'm not sure how to sew something together, I just kind of like, okay, I know that this is okay. I'll just do that. Hi, Nancy. Oh, well, Nancy, I don't think I'm really doing so good at that part right now. I mean, come on. I just sewed this and I don't remember how I did it. I'm wearing it to top it off. And, you know, do as I say, not as I do. Okay. See how I'm doing now? There's my collar. I can still clean finish that right there. This is what's bugging me right now, because I didn't put that in there, and I could have. Pretty sure that's what it is. I could have left my facing in there, and that's what I'm going to do, because now I'm like, okay. I think what I did was a hybrid of some of the ways that I've sewn this. So yeah, I'm going to take out my little section right here. And there's a way that I could have put the facing right there, and then it would be clean finished in there. And all I'd have to do is stitch the back neck of the collar. And that's what's going on here. I know, because, you know, there's nothing like not looking like you know what you're doing in front of a live audience, right? And I'm just laughing at myself because this is so me. But what I did was I accidentally started doing the way I used to sew this like 15, 20 years ago. I like kind of went through that phase of like, I really want to figure out this kind of collar schematic, and this is really similar to that collar schematic. And so I figured out this way, and then I kind of talked to other like really experienced sewers and got their tips, and they taught me things, and then I've talked to production sewers and kind of just figured it out from different angles. And I had my little method that really worked for me. And then I moved on to a totally different thing to nerd out on about sewing. And when I got this pattern, I kind of just did it the way they did it, but the whole time I was like, wait, I used to sew something like this. And then I think like sewing this once last week kind of reminded me what I used to do. And then I mixed up those steps with their steps. So that's what's going on here. I know exactly what's going on here. Okay, so I kind of want that collar in there. Let's see if I can do it. So, like this. Let's sew that. So I'm back to sewing this neckline, but just to the shoulder. Okay? In fact, I'll start at the shoulder so I don't go past. But like once you have this part done, it's like you put the sleeve on and then hem it and you're done. So why not nerd out a little bit on it? And I really like trying to figure out how to do things sometimes. So I just need to take out a little bit of my neck seam here. Actually, I probably need to take out a little bit more. No, I'll just go through here. Go through here. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go through this armhole of the yoke here, and I'm going to sew my shoulder seam right here again, right sides together. I'm going to go as close to that as possible, but I won't make it all the way. And see, I still know, I did need to leave this loose right here. I know I need to leave this loose because my collar is going to finish over that edge right there. That's how. And I'm not doing this in the cleanest possible way. If we ever wanted to do that, we could. But I don't think you guys are really wanting to nerd out as bad as I do sometimes. Let's just get stuff done, you know? All right, so let's see. I'm going to do that. I'm going to put a little pin there just to remind myself to get that facing in there. And then get rid of that thread. It'll be a little tight. Once I hold it right sides together, I just trust. That's where I'm at. It's a very small little section. I can't get all the way up to the neck. Okay, let's make sure my facing is still there. It's very tight in here. Got it. I don't want to catch my blouse. I'm just going to go a little bit and make sure I didn't catch anything. I didn't. Okay, good. There we go. See, that looks a little better right there. So now we're narrowing it down. And now we know we have this going into the neckline like that. And we just need this to the collar here. We'll finish all this off like that. Like that. And then we'll stitch that in the ditch, the little shoulder seam right there. We can get a few more stitches right there. And we have to clip this like that. It's all coming back now. I just did it in the wrong order. I feel like this is how sample makers figure things out. You know what I mean? It's not scary and dangerous. You can just live vicariously through my risk taking. Okay, I'm going to clip this a little bit. Because this one didn't get clipped with all the layers, other layers. And then I'm going to do all what I did here to the other side. You guys came for the backpack, right? And you stayed for the adventure. Experimental sewing. Oh, so I wanted to tell you guys that I think I just confused Janice and Nancy. That's so funny. I want to tell you guys that I sent a newsletter out yesterday. I don't know if any of you are on that list, but in it had my stream schedule like through November. And then there's a few things coming up because I'm going to let I'm going to design a wrapping paper organizer because I've needed one for years, and this is the time of year that I start looking at that thing going, gosh darn it, I really wish I would have made it. Because like all the little gift bags and gift boxes and tags and all that stuff that I accumulate, because we reuse things over and over, and we reuse things that people gift us in, and so that stuff kind of piles up. And so I want to organize it, and I want to hang it from like the closet dowel, like using a coat hanger. Or if that's going to be too heavy, I'm going to make it just squared off at the top with Velcro straps that go over a closet dowel. It just means that takes up that much space in your closet. So anyway, I'm working on that design. It's going to be a free download, and then I'll sew it here so we can do it together. It's just like a fun thing to do. It's something I really want. I'm also going to make the wallet I made for chicken boots and the egg crate last year available as a pattern because it's nice and simple to sew. It's got an elastic closure, and that would be a really great gift thing to make. So I'm going to do that. And then the Notions case pattern that I sew, so the Notions case that we sell is a pattern on our website, and I'm going to make it temporarily a free downloadable pattern, and then I'm going to sew some here, and it's going to be during this time where because I'm sponsoring the Loves to Sew podcast on November 6th, so that is going to be available. So just watch out for those things if you want to make any of those things with us here, and then that way we can sew along and do that, and it should be really fun, so. And if you're not signed up on the newsletter list, you can go to the Chicken Boots website and click the tab, the sewing tab on there. You can sign up for the Chicken Boots newsletter, obviously, but there's two different newsletter options on there. And the one for the sewing is on there. There's a tab, and then there's a link to it. And I'll probably resend that schedule email like early in the week and let people sign up a little bit so they have it. And then then you'll be on the list, and then I'll let people know about the free download. And then everybody who signs up through Love to Sew will get a welcome email that gives them access to that. And it's like through certain dates. So you stayed for the laughter. Oh yeah, I'm kidding. Yes, it's kind of tell. Okay, so how did I do this? All right, let's see. What do I want to happen here? All right, I want all of this to be clean finished. I want that to be there. So I want that to be up there, and I'm going to leave it free right there, and then I'm going to turn it that way and do, okay. I just had to remind myself. What am I doing? Okay. Why did I push oh my gosh. Remember we pushed the yoke seam towards the back. Why is it towards the front now? What are you doing? Come on. Okay. Alrighty. Yeah, I know. It's so like Nancy, like I used to be the type that would wanted to like wrap gifts all pretty and everything. But I feel like over the years, I'm like, okay, that's a lot of work. It's expensive. But we save all that stuff. And now it's just this like thing I don't want to even look at in the closet, So that's why I'm going to do it. All right, I'm going to clip the collar right there. I'm going to fold it up. That's how I used to do that. Yeah. It's all coming back to me now. Okay. All right. Let's see. It's like I'm trying to reinvent the wheel, like all this information is out there. Why am I making it so hard on myself? Okay, so now we can get that into the shoulder seam through the yoke like this. Yeah, and I'm trying to think, like, the last time I had a gift wrap organizer once, and it was made out of vinyl, and it just broke down after a while. So, like, I'm going to make it out of things that you can get, you know, like at the fabric store. But I'm worried about the stiffener part, because the stiffener you guys can get at the fabric store is narrow. It's like 22 inches wide. And I have tons here. I could sell it, but I don't really know if that's even, you know, something people will be interested in. So I can just make it available. I have like 600 yards I'm looking for a home for anyway. So if I sell a few yards of it, it'll just help me in the end. All right, I'm just going to do my shoulder seam best I can here, close as possible. Get that going again. Get rid of that pin. All right, let's make this look like what it's going to be now. I feel like I may have shaken your trust. I gotta prove myself here. Okay. See, oh gosh, that's not gonna fly right there. I got my collar tucked in there. Eek! Eek, I should have checked that. Where is it happening? Where is it happening? Was it on this neckline right here? Okay, where is it? I see it happening right here. It's this piece here. Here, okay, okay. It's probably this neckline right here. Okay. Let's take this out a little bit. Now I feel like I've got to like stream this shirt the proper way. Redeem it. It's going to be the thing, like I post a picture and be like, and don't watch the video on this, because I might just drive you nuts with my antics over it. I think it's right here. Yeah, okay. I caught it right here. Okay. That's it. When I resewed the neckline, I caught the collar and it pinched it. So it's like pleating a little bit. So we'll get rid of that pleat. See right there? All right. Last Saturday was like, I remember thinking, okay, that was such a slog. That was just like too long to make you guys sit there. And when I added this, I was like, don't do it, Sammy. Don't add this. It'll happen again. My husband even stopped by to feed me. Not sweet, but I had the door locked so he couldn't get in. Okay, I'm just going to resew this neckline without pinching it. I'm just going to go a little ways and see how it looks before I go much further. There we go. All good. Get rid of that. Let's hope there's no more of that monkey business. We're all good. Okay. Let's finish this. Oh, let me redo that real quick. Do that shoulder. I get a little paranoid when I'm here on Saturdays by myself. Weird noises out in the street and stuff. Yeah, when we were sewing on Thursday together, like someone came in there and they were lost. And we weren't speaking the same language. We didn't speak the same language as each other. And he just couldn't understand that. I was like, yeah, I don't know what yeah, that's the address. You're at the right address, but I don't know who you are and what you're needing, because it's not me that needs it. And he couldn't understand that. I was like, I have to go. Like, I have a live video happening right now. He looked so lost and confused. I felt kind of bad sending him on his way, but I was like, sorry. he had like my suite number along with like 3 others. He's like 3 through 5. I was like, okay, yeah. There we go. I'm gonna pin this really quick. I'm just gonna pin this like this and hold it there. Like that. All right. I can really get close. Sorry, I'm not pulling that off the camera there. I can get pretty close to the neckline. But I don't want to catch anything, so I have to stop just shy of it. And that's why we have that little spot. You know how I'm always telling you, like, double check your work. It's not worth like going back and having to fix something. This is me showing you why that was really important, that I should have just gone and gotten the directions, because we'd be done by now, right? So there's my neck. Just like that. Collar. Here, I'm going to start pinning it from the center. And then you just clean finish the neckline by top stitching it down. And I don't remember if we did that. I feel like they had a nifty little trick of their own. You didn't have to do all this hoo-ha that I put you through. Make sure the neckline is sewn. Like that. Let's see, is that gonna work? Remember, this is that weird little curvy bit on the collar. That's pretty tricky to sew. You got to do it on this step as well, which is kind of funny. Yeah, there's not a gas station over here at all, and I'm next to, my little complex is next to the rape crisis clinic and a real estate agent. And then my landlords are actually now renting across the parking lot, so they're here. So I think he was probably looking for them. And there's no gas station over here. And there's just really, it's a really small complex, and the Rape Crisis Clinic has a lock on their door that you have to know the key code in for obvious security reasons. So you can't just like walk into their place. Sometimes it just depends. Sometimes it's open and sometimes it's locked. And so I was the open door. The real estate agent's never here. They're only here in the evenings. And he probably didn't understand that the places across the parking lot are part of my complex. And probably where he was going, he's probably going to the landlord. They probably needed, like maybe he was a service. Maybe he was an Uber driver. He was just looking for the person that called him for the ride. And he's just like, dang it. Okay. Ease this in here. Don't want my collar to pull funny. Because this is the part that shows. It won't show, like, this will be against my neck. The collar is going to be like this. Like that. You know? So, let's look at the other side. Okay, this is going to be one of those ones where when my friends say, oh, that's cute, did you make that? I'll be like, maybe. My friends tend to like inspect my things closer, you guys. Like I'm always telling you, you're not making this for the fair or your grandma or whatever, but I do have the occasional friend that likes to really inspect the things that I sew. Just really because they want to figure out how to do it or what I did. It's not disrespectful at all, and I'm totally happy to share, and I don't mind people seeing my mistakes, honestly. I like when people see that I have mistakes. I think one of my pet peeves is when someone says, well, that's easy for you. I'm like, what does that mean? It wasn't always. And it better be easy for me. Otherwise, why am I saying I can do this? This fabric's so much easier to sew than the dress I'm wearing. Okay, I have a feeling I may have a spot of bother there, but I'm not sure. Right now it's looking okay. Yeah, that's okay. What do you guys think? It's cute. You know. I know, I love these little flowers. Yeah, it will be perfect enough. Exactly, Nancy. That's how I feel about it too. All right, let me just throw these sleeves on really quick and then I'll let you guys go. So I'm going to put the cuff on really quick. Maybe I'll leave the cuff. Do I leave the cuff? I'll just put one on and then I'm going to let you guys go. All right? Does that sound fair? What time is it? Oh, yeah. Not bad. Not as late as I thought. All right. I'm glad. Yeah, I bought this fabric for chicken boots, and I bought it really to turn into binding, to do something kind of fun with like just contrast binding on like a solid canvas item. And then when our production started kind of like going through all these transitions, when I had spent years sorting it out, I got a little like nervous. I'd much rather the fabric be available to be whatever I want than pigeonhole it all as one thing, like cut pieces or binding. So I didn't. It's not a Liberty, Nancy, but I bought it because it looks like a Liberty. And I've looked high and low for like a wholesale contact to do Liberty. It's extremely expensive. I'm not even sure our customers would really buy it, but I couldn't find the proper rep, like the Western wrap. So I'm sure I could probably find it if I tried again, you know, eventually. But I found this brand. It's a really high quality fabric. It's not the Tana lawn that you see Liberty using, but it is really, really nice. It's a nice fabric. It's not quite a quilting cotton. Let's see how wide that is, because I lost my notch. So I just need to make sure that it's the same width on either side, just like this. Because this is the like fake cuff, super easy to sew, that I'm wearing right now. Okay, and then I sew it from the inside. Oh shoot, just lose it? Oh no, I didn't, okay. So I'm just gonna pin it in a few places to keep it folded there. I'm not really gonna fold the edge I'm sewing. I'm just gonna keep it folded on this line here, like this. This is such a wide width that it is a little tricky to stay accurate if you don't do something to ensure. There you go. This is also proof that I do use cream thread for just about anything. My pins love to work themselves out. It's really annoying. Because this sleeve is cut straight down on the side seams, it makes this step pretty easy, because there's no like contour on the side seam. You don't have to worry about the angles lining up really well, because when you have that kind of taper on a cuff, when you fold it up to do the hemming, you can run the risk of getting a little, you know, like not folding it right in the right spot, and then you will have like your hem a different length than where it's sewing to. But when the sides of the sleeve are perfectly straight, the whole entire cuff and where the cuff folds onto it, you're not going to have that problem. But it is really wide, and I am a little concerned that I'm getting off. It feels like it, but looks like it's okay. It's a little bit of a structured sewing technique for this kind of delicate flower. But I think when it's got the little like kind of crop top look, it'll make it a little more relaxed. There's my sleeve. You just need to cover the line of the first sewing like that. So there's one sleeve. Open up my seam here. Just gonna finger press it for now. You could always serge your seams together too. You don't have to do it like since I pre-serged all of my edges that were going to be exposed when the garment's done. That means that I didn't get to sew the seam and then serge it, because I don't use my serger as the main seam. And I think I've explained why I don't like the way it looks on the outside when that is used, because I feel like this tension of a serger isn't as, it can be tight enough, but mine's not tight enough to prevent it from pulling apart a little bit, and then you see all those little stitches in this through the seam, you know, like right here. So I have to pull to see my seam stitches from my single needle machine here. If I had used the serger, it would pull a little further and you'd see it, and I just don't like the way that looks. So I use a straight stitch next to my serging, even though this one does have a stitch. See it? There's the seam right there. So I could actually take that out, but I do use it for something else. Something where it's not a garment and we do need the seam. You don't need a serger to sew this though. I proved that last week making it with the, all the French seams, so you could just do that too. Just as a little extra sewing. And then if you sew them wrong, it's extra sewing. Because I always sew one of those wrong with you guys. Always, there's one. It's kind of like in knitting. I like to knit sweaters. That's my thing. But I tell you what, every time I knit a sweater, anytime I knit anything, it's tradition that I leave one loose stitch somewhere. And I look for it the entire time. It's just like this weird curse I have, where I have one live stitch. And it's funny, I was like cleaning up all my knits the other day. Like I've been kind of chipping away at like just maintaining them, like hand washing them. There's moths where we live here that I've never had to deal with before, and that's an issue. So they're nibbling some of my knits, and I've been having to fix them, which is kind of heartbreaking because some of them were really special. And like just doing little bits of maintenance. Like sometimes the end you wove in eventually kind of threads out a little bit. I don't know, just cleaning them up and stuff. Some of them I modified, like I wanted long sleeves on one, so I changed the short sleeves to long sleeves, because I still have the yarn or whatever. And I found a live stitch on one of them from when I knit the sweater years and years ago. I was like, okay, well, I'm really glad my sweater didn't unravel here. But I still have a live stitch here. Of course I do. All right, I'm gonna sew my underarm seam, the side seam here, so I can set my sleeves in. This 3/8 of an inch seam allowance is really throwing me off. I'm going to do a vent on my side seam. And so I'm going to leave like 4 inches open, because then it'll be like a 3-inch vent. Oh, this weird little ruler. It's got these little tacky like circles. I guess it helps a little bit. I just like rulers like this that if this width here is actually a whole inch, however many inches it is this way, it's a whole inch, so I can count on it going either direction. There are a lot of quilting rulers out there with really fantastic grids on them, but I really can't stand that they'll be like 12¼ inches by 11½ inches. It's the weirdest friggin' thing to me, and I'm sure it's because it's needed for like quilt blocks and how you make quilt squares and stuff. It's probably perfectly logical and genius when it comes for that, but it doesn't work for me. I have a few of them, but I will make like, oh, I need 12-inch squares. I'm going to use that grid ruler, and then they're all in 12½ inches square. 12 by 12½ or something weird like that. I'm like, what is going on with the quilt rulers? All right. Here's my blouse. Let's see if I can see. That's my front sleeve. Two more seams and then a hem, and then we're done. Oh, did I just forget to use I just forgot to do my vent on that one side, didn't I? Yeah, I'll try and remember to put it back in. Because I started from the bottom, I totally forgot it. So this would be another thing you could have serged at the end of doing your side seam. You could do this whole thing as one rather than having 2 layers of serging there. That creates a lot of bulk. Oh, you know what? I'm really sorry, guys. I forgot to put my stitch in there. I thought I had. I need a stay stitch here to ease the sleeve. The sleeve fits really nice, so I know it needs that. I know it needs that because sleeves that are woven that fit really nice, they had ease put into them. And I just know this pattern needed that. So I just put a little stitch in there, kind of between the notches. And then I draw it up. You don't want gathers. I mean, it looks gathered right now, but that's because I'm going to distribute those. And really, there aren't any gathers in that. It's just tight now. And let's see, I pulled from the bobbin, or the top of this piece. I don't know if that was the bobbin or not anymore. So I'm going to pull from the same side on this end. If you don't, they lock up. Yeah, they work really good. My favorite ruler to use is the red see-through ruler. Like the brand, it's called See-Through, and it's spelled C-THRU, see-through. And it's 2 inches by 18 inches, and I like the one that has the full like grid on the entire thing. I've gone through so many of those over the course of my sewing and pattern drafting. I used to buy them by the dozen because they eventually get kind of dull. The edges get kind of dull, and then they're not as accurate. So I would kind of switch them out all the time to keep accurate. The other funny thing about those rulers is that one long edge, the parallel line next to it on one side is a true 1/16 of an inch, and on the parallel line on the other side is just less, or like one will be a little over and one will be a little less. And it used to drive me crazy, but then I just started using it, you know, to my advantage. So if I, like, kind of like we were talking about with the kerf, same thing with pattern drafting, you have to account for the pin width or the pencil width of your lines sometimes, because those can add up with really precise mini seamed garments. And so you want to make sure that your ruler's not adding anything. Okay, I didn't even pin any of this. I didn't even look for my anchors because I'm trying to rush, and it's going pretty good. I did a lot of gathers in there. See, look, smooth here, smooth here. I want the gathers on the cap. I'm wearing this sleeve right now, and so you can see, like, this is where you want your shoulder line. You want it right here on top of your shoulder, not below. You don't want your shoulders to end up like, let's see, like right here. Like, you want them to be on top, and then you want your sleeve to kind of round out over your bicep up there. That's how a proper sleeve will fit. It gives you the most range of motion. It looks nice. It looks more tailored. And a lot of folks don't know how to fit their sleeve very well because it's a really tricky thing to fit. And you're kind of at the mercy of how the pattern was drafted. And to make that kind of adjustment is kind of tricky because you can't really adjust the cap of the sleeve without getting into some pretty tricky pattern drafting sometimes. And you can't really monkey around with the back neck, right? So you can't just make across the back of your garment narrower or wider. You have to do it in the shoulder area. So it's kind of a tricky area, but it's really important once you start getting the fit of your shoulders right. Every garment you make will look so much better just because of that. Even if it's not sewn well, even if it doesn't fit well other areas, there's something about when it fits the shoulders, it just makes the whole garment look really nice. I'm going to pull out some of my basting stitch here. You don't have to. I just do it. Because if any of it's showing on the other side, I just got rid of it, you know? Like, where'd it go? There it is, see? Yeah, so I did cross the line right there because it was hard to pull out. My stitching got it. My sewing got it. Here we go. There we go. See, it has that nice little rounded, you push the seam allowances always towards the cap and you have that nice little rounded spot there for your bicep. I'm going to adjust the brightness a little bit. That looks a little better. That looks more like the fabric looks. Yeah. Okay. Let's draw the sleeve up. Sorry about that collar, you guys. That collar was kicking my butt, wasn't it? I just like went forward then backward, then forward then backward. Let me reinvent the wheel here. Figure out how to sew this. Even though I've just did it. Sometimes you just got to look at it like, well, I know what I want it to look like. And that's what I think sample makers do. They know what they want it to be. And so sometimes they kind of monkey around going back and forth. And then they say, all right, this is what I need from you to make it look like this. As a pattern drafter, they'll tell you, they'll give it to you. They'll be like, this is what I need. Like, okay, great. I can work with that. Or they know, they give you the feedback like, oh, and I know the production floor would want this kind of thing, you know. It's easier for them to do it that way. Alrighty. Take out this right now before I forget, because I wouldn't want to hem it and have one side have a vent and one side not. That would be kind of funny. Okay. Now I'm ready. I found a really great video on how to add music. So I'm going to figure it out, you guys. And hopefully I'll find a music. That'll be a nice background. I think it'll be nice. Alright, so I pushed the seam allowance to the back. Well, that's the back. Push the seam allowance to the back. And I'm going to get it going. See how messy my serger is, those little edges? I think they're all like that, but it's kind of one of my weaknesses is knowing what to do with that, you know? Like I've seen people like take the tail and thread the tail of a serger through a, like your serging thread tail that comes off, thread it through like a tapestry needle and then weave it in. And that works for some things, but I wouldn't do it for this, you know? Trying not to sew my gathering stitch because that way it'll be easier to remove later. Plus, I shouldn't be sewing on it because it's in the seam allowance, but barely. So I'm just trying to go right next to it. I worked so hard this week, you guys. Like, oof, being gone and then coming back. But I had so much stuff to get ready for sewing that I spent like solid 2 days, the entire day, just like pulling as fast as I could, like pulling things out of the bins to sew, prepping them with all binding, serging, and then handing them off on Wednesday. And it was so much work. I got so much done this week though. And then that newsletter I sent out yesterday was a little bit too epic. I just need to do them more often so they're not so epic. But it has a lot of like just images that I had to create, and then the schedule. So I feel like the schedule's good because then I have something to follow. All right, that looks pretty good. Let me pull out my gathering stitch and it'll relax even more. Just want to make sure I pull from the side that I gathered from. Otherwise it'll lock up and I won't be able to get it. Let's see now, there it's gone. I do this sometimes on waist seams, but not always because they're so long. But I will do that. I will remove them on waist seams too sometimes because I don't want them to peek out of the outside, you know, like of my seam. Would you like to see it so far? It's cute. You're probably going to see me wear this a lot. Oh my gosh, it looks like a pajama top. Does this look like a pajama top? This so looks like a pajama top. But you know what? Maybe I'll just make, maybe I'll make jammy bottoms and then I'll have new pajamas. I like that idea. All right, I'm going to hem the bottom. And I'm going to do it like this, where kind of like what I did on the dress, but this is going to be right on the seam's going to be right on the bottom of the hem. So I sewed across the facing. I know, sorry I'm not illustrating everything I'm doing. I'm going really fast on this shirt because we already have a dress video up. We can always watch that. I'm just doing a shirt version. Okay, let's make sure our center front placket matches. And then we'll sew the other hem to match it. Like that. Like this. Be better if I ironed it first. Okay. Trying to pull equally. Make sure that my center fronts will line up when it's buttoned. And I always make sure that I do it at a right angle as well. That. going to cut this off and just a little bit of that as well. It's unnecessary bulk. And then I'm going to turn it. You can actually get rid of all of this right here, like that. Leave that because it'll be in the inside. Yeah, I could wear it with a jean jacket. Jeans and boots, a belt, it will look awesome. Well, it's kind of short for a belt, but I could put a belt with the jeans. I left my belt here yesterday, I remember that. I can wear matching bottoms. It's like 24-hour wear. The ultimate in lounge wear. You could wear it to work and to bed. I was just thinking about, I'm going to like do the tamarack jacket next week, just so you guys know what's coming up. It'll be a 2-part stream. I won't quilt the entire thing on stream unless I find it's going really quickly, because I don't really want to do that with my time with you. There are welt pockets on that. I haven't sewn those in years. We'll see how I do. And then I think after that is when I'm going to sew some of the other things I was mentioning earlier, like, I can't remember my schedule, but then I'll be doing things like the wrapping paper organizer, the notions case, and the wallet, things like that, the quilt kit. I'm going to do the quilt kit. Oh, that was the other thing I was going to say is in that newsletter, I put a code in there for people to buy the quilt kit we have here for 20% off, I think. So, all right, so I'm just going to do this at the vent. So I've got it turned up. I'm going to turn a little corner. I'm going to turn it over again like that. There are lots of nicer ways to sew your hems, you guys. You know me. I don't fuss with hems. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. And then I'm going to sew across like this. This is the best way to sew a vent because then you can make sure you get it the same length, just like that. See? I'm going to do this. I'm actually going to turn this under first on the back side. Usually I don't do it like this, but I'm going to do it symmetrical, sewing wise, sewing symmetry. I'm going to get rid of these threads, they're in my way. Okay, like that. Like that. And then, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I turn it under like that and like that. I'm going to tuck that under as well. Oh, I need to turn this down. See, doing the symmetry is a little trickier. I won't do the other one symmetrical. You can see why, what the difference would be. It would just be like one, I come at it, since I'm coming at it a certain direction. Like this is just too hard. I'm not going to do that. I don't care that it's symmetrical. I just don't make this stuff precious. Which, no, I asked, yeah. So Janice, I asked her about, because she, was it? Yeah. So I asked her about quilting. So I posted on one of the, that's Grainline Studio, right? Yeah, they did the tamarack jacket. And so she was talking about making a muslin, using pre-quilted fabric. So I just thought it would be a good opportunity to ask, like, is the sizing taken up? Is it accounted for? So when you quilt something, it shrinks all the layers, right? So you've got 3 layers. You got your lining, your batting, and your outer fabric. And when you quilt things, I'm not a quilter. I just have heard this talked about. So I knew enough to know that if it's quilted, it makes it smaller, the whole thing. And so I did skim that pattern twice to see if it's mentioned in there, if that's accounted for, and I didn't see it. And I figure it is because so many people will sew this and it's a successful garment, but I wanted to know about that and just ask her, and she says it is accounted for it in the sizing. So if you just cut out your tamarack based on your measurements, your body measurements, and use that, you should be accounting for all of the quilting that you'll be doing in the loss of the sizing of the garment pieces. So that is, she did answer me. All right, so see, I do it. See, they're different. I know Rebecca has sewn one. I don't know if she's still, yeah, so you quilted before you did your final cut. See, and that's what I was wondering. Because I bet quilters, that's what they would do. They would quilt the fabric and then cut out their pieces. But that's not how the instructions are, so that's why I was, this is taking me forever because I'm talking. I'm going to mark that right there. No! Oh my gosh. All right, I'm going to pin this. I'm going to pin this. I'm trying to get the vent to match, and that's why I'm fussing and fussing and fussing right now. I'm just doing this differently. Why is this feeling weird? Thinking about it too much. So if that helps with your tamarack, are any of you doing that? Because they're having like a casual sew along right now. That's why I decided to do it. I was like, I've never made this. And I actually haven't been that big of a fan of the garment. I think it's kind of an odd proportion for some reason. I don't know why. Why am I having so much trouble with this? I'm just going to do this. There we go. There we go. Now I'm going to finish. Oh my gosh. Okay, that's not ideal. I don't really want that to look like that, but I am tired of fussing with it. It's fine. It's fine. I want to be done here. This was a muslin, right? I'm not a big fan of doing muslins out of real fabric, but you know, yeah, we do. So, meaning you added more, like, yeah, the traditional pattern just has those like parallel channels. So you're saying, Rebecca, that you did even more quilting than that, right? Like smaller squares or something like that. I've seen yours. It's really cute, but I can't remember what the quilting is like on it. Yeah, right, Janice? I know. I was like, okay, I'm not a quilter, so I just don't know how much loss to expect. And I know, like, if you're washing something, the bigger the piece, the less shrinkage you get on that piece. But it will still keep shrinking a little bit over time. But washing and quilting, totally different things, you know? I didn't know if it was the same concept, though. Like, if you were doing a huge queen-sized quilt and quilting it with their, like, fancy long-arm machines. This is the worst hem I've ever sewn. Oh, my gosh. I mean, here with you guys, I've sewn worse hems, trust me. Yeah, I wasn't sure. Like, if you're quilting a king-size quilt versus a twin-size quilt, is there less shrinkage happening because it's a bigger piece, or is there more, you know? I don't know. I don't know why I'm having so much trouble with this. I'm not sure, Janice. Like, I'm kind of, so here's the deal. Like, I'm going to sew the tamarack twice. I'm going to sew it as a jacket this coming week, and then I'm going to sew it as a vest because I really want a vest. And the vest, I have the stuff for. I'm going to make a denim vest. And I'm hoping it doesn't look like a biker jacket because the look just doesn't look great on me, you know? Like, I say that in all seriousness. Like, I don't mind that look, but it doesn't look good on me. So, oh my gosh, this is the worst. Don't look at my hem, you guys. Don't look at my hem. So I think what I want to do for my tamarack is a canvas jacket. And I have lots of canvas here, and I was thinking about a navy blue canvas. I kind of like that look. But I'm rushing this. It's a pity I'm rushing this. I'm shaming the sewing industry right now by doing this so badly. And if I do that canvas, I actually have this really interesting fabric that I bought at Josephine Dry Goods in Portland. They're known for doing really nice garment fabrics. Now there's a lot of places that do garment fabrics. Yeah, see, that's what I thought. Yeah, I think so, Rebecca. I think you're right. Yeah. So I'm trying to decide what quilt stitch that I want to use. Like I'm being fancy. I'm not going to do anything fancy. I'm just, what I really want is diagonal lines, like 2 inches, 2 inches apart, diagonal lines. 2 inches or, yeah. That's what I want. So I don't know if I'm being ambitious, since I'm not a quilter. I tend to just be like, oh, this is what I want, and I do it, like most beginners do, and then they get themselves into kind of a pickle, All right, this is the worst hem I've ever. I wish you guys didn't have to see that. I feel like I scarred you. All right, let's see how it looks. My new jammy top. No. Once it's ironed, though. Yeah, see? So that would be a nice little blouse, little quilt. It looks like jammies, you guys. We'll see. Are you going to make the tamarack, Janice? I'm curious. It'd be fun to do kind of an unofficial sew along. All right, you guys. The inside looks pretty good. See, except for my messy serger here. I gotta practice my welt pockets. I could tell that I was like starting to fret about doing welt pockets in front of you guys. And then I literally had to tell myself, like, you're a better sewer than the last time you sewed these things. And maybe if you practice, it'll all be okay, Sarami. I had to, like, pep talk myself. But on the vest, I don't think I'll do welts. And so I was kind of wanting to do the vest first so that I could, like, kind of cut my teeth on one of the tamaracks first. Oh, I forgot to stitch my sleeve here. But then I realized that that's probably only like if I quilt that and then just sew it on stream the rest of the way without welt pockets, that's a very quick sew. That's not a two-parter. And I knew Rebecca was going to sew one, and so I kind of wanted to do the full shebang, so that I wasn't cheating. Oh, now you're going to do a vest, Rebecca. No, Janice, it tells you, it gives you a guide for doing like the one that's on the cover, but then it gives you examples of other things and tips and tricks. So it does kind of explain the quilting part of it. And I know that they have extensive amounts of information on their website. And she reposted all of the blog posts she did when she originally released the pattern in a nice, tidy area. And so you can go and refer back to that right now and see what their tips and tricks were and hacks and things like that. So it's all in a nice little spot. So if you're concerned about fabric choices. I also saw on Blackbird Fabrics that she has boiled wool right now in lots of different colors. And I saw that yellow, that yellow that I've been using in those shirts with the flowers on them, the buttercup yellow. she has a boiled wool in that, and I was like, ooh, I kind of want a boiled wool tamarack. Oh God, you're making those cosmetic bags. Those, if they're small, they're probably really hard. Oh, that's smart, Rebecca. You created a blank version so that you could make like a muslin out of it. Yeah, I don't know if I'll put that much effort into it. You obviously see what I do. I'm just like, let's wing this, you know? I really want the vest. Like, I want the vest, and so I'm kind of like wanting to make it first, but I also want to show it sewn the way that the pattern has you do it. Maybe I'd make like, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to think about this. As I also have to have a binding that I like, because the binding shows on the outside on that one, right? Because it's on the edge, not to the inside. So that's something I need to think about too, because my lining wouldn't be suitable binding. It's too lightweight. It's like a shirting. It's like a true shirting because it's actually bought from a place that sold or made shirts. And then the fabric store bought some of it. It's really cool though. It's like a men's pinstripe blue and white, like it almost looks like pillow ticking, like that kind of pinstripe. And then there's flowers kind of intermittent in there. It's the strangest fabric. I got it, and I got it for something else, but I used the other fabric for something. So anyway, all right, so let's look at our backpack, because that's where we started, and look at how amazing it is. So good. I'm into it. I want to make more. I kind of want to just like scale this down and make like this size for like my niece and nephew. You know what I mean? So I know, Janice, right? And don't you think like the boiled wool, you could do a tamarack out of it, and you wouldn't even need an interlining. You could just quilt the boiled wool with lining. I feel like that would be, I really like the idea. Like, what if it had plaid lining? What if it was reversible? What if you did the plaid on the outside and the boiled wool on the inside, and it'd be cozy? But I can't get that by Wednesday because they're in Canada. So that's where that's my stumbling block there. Thanks, Rebecca. All right, you guys, I'm going to sign off. I love talking with you guys about this stuff. So thanks for helping me figure it out. And you'll see what I'm going to make my tamarack on Thursday, and so will I, because I don't really know yet, and I've got to figure that out, and it's all got to be really close by, so we'll see. Oh, the uniform tunic in boiled wool. Ooh, I'm going to look that up. I can't remember what that looks like. I remember looking that up, though. There's a lot of good patterns right now. Some I'm a little worried about, but there's others I'm really into. I'm going to make the ginger jeans again soon, you guys. I'm not done with that. I love mine so much. I think I should have made a size smaller because of the stretch. And I need a thicker pellon in the waistband. And I want to make them not out of denim, but I have denim to make 3 pairs right now. So that would be fun. So those are on the schedule. And then what is the other thing that's on the schedule? Well, I was going to put pajamas on the schedule, but now I feel like I just made pajamas. Oh, thanks, Janice. I know, you're making me blush. I am not the master. I have tons left to learn. So I just hope that I can figure it out, and you'll bear with me while I do. So, all right, guys. Well, have a fabulous weekend. I hope you guys sew something. Join me on Instagram. I'm kind of quiet at the beginning of the week, and I don't ramp up again until like Wednesdays usually, where I start showing what I'm making, because, you know, I got that day job thing that we all have. And I hope you'll join me and sign up for that newsletter, because I'll be starting to have some free pattern downloads and things, and hopefully things you guys will like to make. And feel free to always request what you want, and I will see you next Thursday. So I'll see you then at 10 a.m. or maybe next Saturday. Have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye, guys.